Hi there. Welcome to the RSTNE Roundtable podcast, a discussion that focuses in the gold standard of the Word of Yahuwah. Here are your three hosts, Sholiak Moshe, leader Yoshiyahu, and leader Mordecai.
All right, here we is. Shalom, peeps, the round table. Woo, woo.
Shalom.
RSTNE round table. Woo! I'm here with all my woo. I'm here with all my peeps. Today's question: should I wear a beanie or should I not wear a beanie? Okay, now that we've
Yes.
got that, I want. All right, leave me alone. Now that we got that settled, I want to welcome our panel. Not peeps, the leader is Mordechai. Am I pronouncing that? Mordechai Ramos and Little Melech in his own mind, Yoshiyahu ben Moshe ben Aserdo. So we're here with my beanie. I've been putting the beanie on by popular demand. The table is round, the minds are set. It's a pagan holiday, and we do thank Yahuwah for America. Because America, it's a messed up country, but it's the least of the messed up. In all the messed up countries, we still have the freedom to come on and act like fools for Mashiach. So, any opening remarks? Any revelations since the last time we got together at the round table? And then I'll throw some stuff at you, and we'll get the ball rolling. I believe this is episode number 7 or something to that effect. So, Mordechai, what's been on your heart or mind regarding the word of Yahuwah, the word of Yahuwah recorded in the RSTNE, the word of Yahuwah in general, if you like? What's going on over there? Are you
Baruch
frozen?
Hashem, Yahuwah. Yes,
Okay, there you are. Go.
it's good. I've been very, very busy. I've been very, very busy
Are you
lately.
teaching
I'm
your
excited
pigeons Hebrew?
about last-
You've been you've been teaching your pigeons Hebrew?
I talk I talk I talk to them all the time. I praise Yah all the
I'm sure
time.
you do.
There.
That's a
But
problem I can't help you with. You need
yeah, no, I'm excited
you need
about
professional. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I'm
I'm
I'm very
sorry. Go ahead.
excited about the new RSTNE
Yeah, yeah,
coming
yeah,
out now.
yeah.
I
Me
am going
three.
to one,
Me
Yahuwah
three.
willing.
Yeah, yeah. We have the two new Living Vine translation, and we have the Simple English edition. And I'm telling you, you saw the picture yesterday. I posted. I mean, it literally took us all day just to pack orders. I mean, we're not complaining. Praise Yahuwah. That's a good problem to have. But we have a lot of orders on the Living Vine translation, which is the highest level 3, and then on the level 1, the simple. It seems, yeah, Mordechai, you're coming in and out. You may want to go back out and come back in because you're coming in and out. Try it again, like log back in.
Okay.
So it appears that the level 1 is very popular because a lot of people they consider all the Hebrew and the glossary going back and forth. They consider it like a little bit of a bumpy ride, and so they prefer to just read the scriptures and meditate on the scriptures and focus in on the scriptures. And they when they have to go back into the glossary, even though they're learning Hebrew, it seems like it's for some people, not all, for some people, it's a little too bumpy, but the sales are fantastic. And I also want to point out something that people need to keep in mind. Okay, we accept donations for these. In other words, we are a non for profit tax exempt entity, which means that we cannot sell stuff like a supermarket. And when people give, it's considered a donation. Now we can pay our bills. We can even take a little salary so that we can live and survive. But basically, um, anything we take in has to be ministry related. So, just so people understand, when they're donating the suggested amount, first we cover the printing cost, and we cover the other costs like the boxes. People don't think boxes, packing material. We just can't throw a book into a box. Okay, so I mean, businesses call that handling fees. So, and whatever is left over, we have to reinvest, right? So, but the reaction to the simple English edition, the Living Vine, and in addition to the standard versions, have been absolutely fantastic. Literally, yesterday we spent all day just packing orders, and there's so many orders that are coming in because people are hungry. They're tired of being lied to. They're tired of deception. They're tired of texts that ignore the discoveries, the archaeological discoveries of the last 100 years, of the manuscripts that are coming from the earth, from overseas, and even dropping down from heaven. They're just tired of stale bread. They don't mind being challenged because they know the word of Yahuwah is living. It's a living oracle. It's not something that's cemented on stone. It has to speak to the heart. And so um, people finally understand that we are bold, and like Miriam, when she received the prophecy in her heart about the birth of Yahusha, she treasured these things in her heart, and then she acted on them, and we're acting everything that the Father shows us. We're acting on. So you're glad to see that, and I am too, to see that the new ones are so popular. Any thoughts, Yosh, before we get started?
I'm also excited about this level thing. I thought it was not going to be as popular as it is
Hmm.
because I thought everybody was kind of comfortable with the words already inserted prior to, this expansion of levels.
Hmm.
But it's very nice how things are coming to pass because it's interesting that we are being able to reach more people than we expected, and the people that we already had, so to speak, are getting more comfortable with the word, despite the fact that there's not that many Hebrew words and whatever. But learning Hebrew, as painful it may sound to some people, is not mandatory to get to heaven. So we kind
Right.
of just need to get the word across. So I'm interested and glad that we are getting the word across, regardless of how much Hebrew do we have inserted there. And I'm also happy because I get to be a part of it.
Right. But now here's something else before I forget. I agree with both of you. But here's something before I forget. And this is something that a lot of people don't know. So this is interesting. It's very interesting. You could ask any creator, whether it's music, whether it's website, whatever. We're in the age of digital age where everything is online. The good part, everything is free and accessible, right? The bad part is the theft, the piracy and the theft that nobody can control. It's completely out of control. I can copy and bootleg Taylor Swift's albums and charge people $9. I can download stuff from iTunes and resell it and bootleg it. The piracy is completely out of control. So something that a lot of people don't know, don't understand, is that in the early days, back in the days of the first edition, the second edition of the RSTNE, the Restoration Scriptures True Name Edition, today it would be editions, plural. We would send out PDFs. Like, we were so happy that we had customers. We were just happy that because we were introducing it as a brand, as the cutting edge restored words of Yahuwah that it is. In the early days, we were sending out PDFs. So Mordechai may remember this. So
Um,
you can order a book, you could order a PDF file, and of course, people are dishonest, or they believe that they're Robin Hood, that they've been called by Yahuwah to be Robin Hood and violate the Torah, meaning stealing from those who have and giving it to those who don't have. So they're like a messianic Robin Hood, right? Which is a contradiction and it's an oxymoron. But regardless, and so in the early days, we were quite naive because we thought that people who read the Torah and studied the Torah would actually be willing to obey the commandment that says "Lo tirtzach." I'm sorry, "Lo ganaf." You shall not steal. So what I'm trying to say is the first edition through the fourth editions of the PDF are all over the internet. They've been stolen, they've been hijacked, they've been pirated. You can look it up and get a free copy. First edition, second. But see, here's the thing. And then finally I made the standard edition free. So what you see online now, free of charge, copy, paste, you can do whatever you want with it. If you're stupid enough to sit there and print 2,000 pages, you can print it too, for all I care. Okay. But see, we did that because we felt led of the Ruach to do that. Not only have we been blessed since we've done that, and not only have our donations increased, okay, to purchase copies. Remember, when we sell copies, it's not really sales or a ministry; it's donations. But all the additions that we had now have, we have. I call it Crazy Eight, but Yasher's not an addition. So Apocrypha is not an addition. So in terms of editions, you've got the standard, you've got the Living Vine, and you have the Simple English. The the new versions, if you heard that, that was probably an order. Did you guys hear that? Ding ding. Those are probably it's funny when I hear like two consecutive bing bing. That's an order. I know it's an order because I get a copy of the order and I get a copy of the payment. You guys heard that? Bing, bing, right? So somebody's ordering right now while we're speaking. So anyway, the point is that we learned the hard way and we don't give out PDFs anymore. People would say, oh, I'll pay for a PDF. Do you have PDF? In the early days, we were naive. Sure, we'll send you a PDF, $40. Yeah. We make money because, it doesn't cost us $40 to make a PDF. Oh, yeah. But we got burned. So now the point is nobody has a PDF anymore. If you got a copy of the RSTNA, it's somewhere between 15, 20, or 5 years old. So you have a copy that's so outdated that somebody posted it because they wanted to be a jerk, or they believe the gospel is free and we're charging, or some other stupidity. Okay. The gospel is free, but trust me, somebody had to feed Yahusha's horse, and somebody had to support his ministry as he went from town to town. But the message was free. He never charged for the message, but he had women who were supporting his ministry, who were financing him, so he was able to travel without burden. So none of the new editions that we've just added are anywhere online. See, so nobody has a copy. Check this out. What I'm trying to say is nobody has a copy of the Living Vine, and they will not get one. Nobody has a copy of the Simple English. See? So we outfox the foxes. If you have a copy that's on the internet, either we put it out there, that's the standard edition, and we put it out there for poor folks and people who want to study the word, but you don't have the recent editions, and you're not going to. See? So out of all the editions that are out there, there's only one that people have a copy to. The others, you have to support the ministry and keep us going. Not cool? Nobody has a copy. Okay, what Yoshi was working on with the Living Vine, nobody has a copy. What he was working on for me, formatting and so forth, nobody has a copy. The one we're working on now, and it's going to be called the rest. I don't even know if Yoshi knows this, Mordecai. It's going to be called the Restoration Scriptures, Aramaic True Name Edition. Simply Aramaic. Every word, not one word from the Greek, Not one word from the Hebrew, not one word from the English. The Restoration Scripture, Aramaic, True Name Edition. There's never
That's
been
only
anything like it.
Hashanah?
It's under production right now.
No, but is the Aramaic part is only the Brit Hadashah or the whole Tanakh?
Both. Both. Uncorrupted by the Greeks, uncorrupted by the Church, uncorrupted by the Masoretes. We're working on it as we speak. So what I'm trying to say is, what I have found, and you guys can chip in here before we get started, it, even though I guess we have gotten started, the these three new editions, nobody has bootlegged it, nobody has stolen it, and they're not going to, because they can chirp and yell and scream all we want that we're charging for the word. I don't care. I don't care if they turn red in the face. They're not getting a copy. They're gonna get what they got. A lot of ministries would not do what we've done. We put it out there free. I removed the protection so you can copy and paste it and print it. That's all we're gonna do. That's the version. If you have a version, it's either old and outdated or it's provided by us, by the grace of Yahuwah that He's given us, free of charge, but you have the standard version. All these new editions that are running out the door, that are restoring stuff, you have to donate to the ministry to keep us going. And and we're very comfortable with that. We're in shalom with that. What do you guys say?
Well, I thought the only scripture that was written in Aramaic was the book of Daniel in the Tanakh. I don't know.
Right, but you need review one of my teachings, like from a few Shabbats ago. You might have missed it because you were meeting. Review one of my teachings in Matthew 13 and in Matthew 23. Yahusha says in Matthew 23, he says, "Behold, I send unto you scribes. Some of them you kill, some of them you persecute." Right. So who were the scribes that were working for Yahusha? They were not Masoretic scribes. They were not from the school of Ezra. Then in Matthew 13, he says, a true scribe, as opposed to the false scribes of the Pharisees and today the church. He said, a true scribe brings forth from his treasure things old and new, right? So as I've studied this, and you can review the teaching, it's from a few Shabbats ago, I believe Yahusha knew that the manuscripts that were available in his day were already corrupted by the school of Ezra. And of course, now, hundreds of years later, it's even more corrupt. And so he gave the Brit Hadashah in Aramaic, and he gave the Tanakh in Aramaic, because the manuscript that we're using for the Aramaic Tanakh is dated. It's carbon dated. It's scientifically dated. I can give you the exact name, or Yoshi might have the exact name. And it dates back to the first century. So I firmly believe, I have come to believe through my latest studies, that that is correct. The original was Hebrew. That is correct. But because of the corruption of the school of Ezra and the other anti-Messiah corruption, Yahusha trained scribes. And these scribes were tasked, number one, correct Tanakh, and number two, leave a record of my life and my ministry. So I believe the Aramaic we have today is not the original. It's not the original, but it's the one Yahusha. Who were the scribes that Yahusha sent? He talks about, he said, I send you scribes. Certainly he didn't send the scribes who conspired to kill him and were sons of darkness, right? And they were moonwalkers, right? He didn't send those scribes. He didn't send the scribes that took away one of the two sticks and wouldn't let Ephraim return and serve Yahuwah, and told Israel to divorce their wives, even though they used to be Moabites and Arabs, but they had converted to the Aloha Yahuwah of Israel. And Ezra said, it doesn't matter if they have the true faith, get rid of them anyway, because they're not Jewish. Yahusha is not going to endorse that. So the scribes that Yahusha sent were personally trained by him. And I'm about 102% sure that when Yahusha gave the New Testament, he also fixed the Tanakh. So even though it's not the original, it's the restoration. So as I taught a few Shabbats ago, the restoration scriptures are actually what Yahusha did in the Aramaic. Those were the beginning of the restoration. Those are the real restoration scriptures. because the New Testament in Aramaic talks about the restoration of Israel, right? And the new covenant, right? And the Tanakh talks about, corrects all the errors. All the errors that you have in the Masoretic are gone in the Peshitta Old Testament. All the 5,800 various manuscripts and readings that you have in the Greek are gone in the Aramaic Old Testament. So while it's not the original, it's restored. Now the question is, who restored it? The Pharisees are not going to restore the Aramaic. The church is not going to restore the Aramaic. They're going to keep playing with the Textus Receptus, which is the copy and paste of 5,800 various manuscripts. So based on Matthew 13 and based on Matthew 23, Yahusha, we have two witnesses where Yahusha claims to have trained and sent his scribes to fix the mess of the other scribes that try to kill him. So we're releasing this, Yah willing, in a few weeks, okay? And Yoshi can tell you a little bit more about it. He's working slow. We're trying not to rush, so that we don't have to keep redoing this. But the point is, this is going to be another tool. So now, what started with the first version back in 2002, I guess it was 20 years ago, whatever it was, 2004, is now an entire line of versions, and none of them are pirated and will be pirated because we learned there's going to be no PDFs. So you can pay me $100 for a PDF. I'm not going to give it to you because I know what's going to wind up happening. It's going to wind up somewhere in Mexico being distributed. So all y'all that have using pirated versions and you don't want to support the work of Yahuwah, enjoy it. Enjoy your PDF that you have. It's about 15, 20 years old. And then the one we give you by the grace of Yahuwah, because we love you and we want the word to go out of Zion. But all the new stuff that's coming, no, you're going to have to become a partner with this ministry. And that's what Yahuwah wants. He wants you to be partners. So it's not a one or two man or three man dog and pony show. Gentlemen, comment?
Well, Yirmiyahu 8:8 was before Ezra, and if it was before Ezra, means that they were already corrupting scriptures way before Ezra.
Well, what's interesting, but okay, that's an interesting point. You mentioned Jeremiah 8:8. Well, you know, and I know that Daniel quotes Jeremiah, right? He says, as Jeremiah the prophet says, we're stuck here in Babylon. Daniel's quoting Jeremiah. So that brings up the point, not the question. There's no question. That brings up the point that you just brought up. Who is Jeremiah writing to? He's talking to scribes who were alive in his generation. He's not referring to Moses and Aaron. He's not referring to the scribes that Yahusha is going to train in the Aramaic to start the restoration scriptures, right? Who's Jeremiah talking to? He's talking to the school of Ezra. Because Ezra and Daniel and Jeremiah are all what? They're all contemporaries. They're all contemporaries. So the scribes that, notice, Jeremiah, like you brought up, Jeremiah is not talking about Daniel. Daniel was not a scribe. He was a magi, right? He was a teller of the accounts of Yahuwah. It was Ezra who was the scribe. So that's literally Jeremiah rebuking the school of Ezra, literally. Because the Masoretes didn't even exist, bro. He's not rebuking the Masoretes. They didn't even exist for another, technically, 600 AD, right around the time of Muhammad, 700 AD. They didn't even exist. That was 900, 1,000 years before. Let me see, 400 BC, 700 AD. You're talking about 1,100 years. So you hit the nail on the head. Who is Jeremiah talking to? Not talking to Daniel. Daniel was a righteous man. Daniel was not a scribe. The school of Daniel in Babylon, they were not scribes. They were magi. Right?
Yeah. I didn't know the word contemporary. I got to study more.
Yeah.
Jeremiah and Ezra, I didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Because look, Ezra's mentioned, Daniel's mentioned in the book of Ezra. Jeremiah is mentioned in the book of Daniel. These guys were all contemporaries. I know Daniel was in Babylon. I know Ezra was in Babylon because he was one of the returnees. I know Mordecai was in Babylon. He's not called Mordecai. He's called Belashon. Okay, meaning he was an expert in languages. So that makes you wonder too what role Mordecai, not you, but your namesake, played in the house of Ezra. I'm not accusing him. I just don't know. But I do know that Belashon, history tells us, is the nickname for Mordecai. So he was very proficient in languages. And he's listed as one of the returnees with Ezra. But yeah, Jeremiah 8:8, man, that nails it right there. And it was a brother. It was just a brother in Yadi, brother Franco, right? Brother Franco. He pointed that out. He said, not only did Yahusha send scribes that the Pharisees rejected. Well, who were those scribes? The only ones the Pharisees would reject were the ones that were sent by Yahusha. And then in Matthew 13, he again says he sent scribes. He said, as opposed to a false scribe, a true scribe is trained by me. He's given old things to restore. That's the Tanakh into the corrupted Hebrew, into Aramaic, and new things. Yahusha said, I'm giving the true scribes old things to restore and new things to restore. Powerful. He came up with that, and it's like my eyes open. Powerful stuff. Yosh, Mordecai, anything?
Yeah, just wanted to say that it's interesting as I'm working in the file, and it's taking forever because to start formatting a file, basically have to go from the ground up, and all sorts of problems start, all sorts of weird things happen. But anyway, it's interesting that when I was working with the Avia scriptures, basing my efforts on the Septuagint, I found it interesting that the Septuagint, which is a Greek translation from an Aramaic source, had a lot of things missing. And in this Aramaic Peshitta, we have some verses missing. And what does that tell me? That the Peshitta was so right that people started trying to rob it and tear it apart because we have some verses missing because the manuscripts were basically moved from here and there. For instance, the Brenton Septuagint is based on a file that Napoleon stolen. So these manuscripts, they are far more valuable than we can even imagine, especially the Aramaic source, because the Hebrew was so doctored with that people say, okay, it's the Hebrew, of course it's the original, but we have a lot of contradictions there, supposed contradictions. So we're not gonna be fixated on that. And you have thousands of Hebrew versions and whatever, thousands of Greek versions as well. But the Aramaic, they are so few and so hard to find, and that should tell us something. And it is interesting that you pointed out the piracy, and that's pretty much what Ezra did when they came from Babylon, because he produced his own versions with his own opinion, basing the text and racist opinion, vexing a part of our own people. And
Yep.
we bashed on Ezra several times, but and rightfully so. But my point is,
We exposed him. We didn't just bash on
yeah,
him. We exposed him.
we exposed him.
How about the chutzpah that he had when he moved Yahuwah's altar of blessing to the Mount of Cursing?
Yep.
When we know the original altar of Joshua was on Mount Gerizim, what did Ezra do to make the Samaritans look like clowns? He moved Joshua's altar to the mountain of cursing and put Yahuwah's name as a curse. If that doesn't tell you something, how did that happen? How did that
And
happen?
I'm not even sold that the Ten Commandments are not completely messed up with, because you have the first commandment, I am Yahuwah. Okay, you're Aloha. That's not a commandment. That's a signature. So we have, after the Ten Commandments, you shall build an altar of stone or earth. How is that? How is that not a commandment? That's literally an order for us to do, but it's after the 10 words. So I'm not even sold completely that the Ten Commandments were not, doctored or monkeyed by Ezra
Okay,
and his scribes,
wait a
because
second. Wait a second. But just so our audience understands, you're talking about the Samaritan Torah.
yes, precisely from the people that Ezra was vexing.
We're throwing a lot of stuff out there: Aramaic, Samaritan, Greek. So What Yoshi's saying is that if you look at the Samaritan Torah, the Ten Commandments are different. And in the Ten Commandments of the Samaritan Torah, it says, "You shall not," like you were saying, that's a command, "you shall not build an altar to me from stone. You shall build an altar of dust to come to me humbly, and to come to me not as a king, but that recognition that you're earth and you're part of the earth, and you're seeking the Creator, right? To humble us, right?
Yep.
So that's actually a command in the Samaritan Torah. And then by the time Ezra does whatever he does, that disappears. Because when you think about it, right? When you think about it, what is Ezra involved with? What is Ezra and Nehemiah involved with when it comes to altars? What kind of altars were they building? Think about it.
Yep.
When they were rebuilding the temple and restoring the temple, what kind of altars do you think they used?
Stone cut stones.
Bingo. Bingo. So that's the question. Yahuwah says, build an altar of earth. Ezra and Nehemiah say, we're rebuilding the temple. And did they use stones or did they use earth? That's right. They used cut stones from this from Lebanon and Hiram and so forth. So that's a perfect example. That's a perfect example. But here's something we need to clarify regarding the Septuagint. The Septuagint has a legitimacy in the sense that it was translated by 70 scholars from Yerushalayim. They didn't hate Yahusha because that was before Yahusha came. They had a more ancient Hebrew manuscript. Okay, so it was not somehow, it was really different from what Ezra had. So there are two lineages of Hebrew manuscripts. One is the House of Ezra, which became the Masoretic. More errors were added, so the errors were compounded. But then we have another lineage of manuscripts, not the Septuagint being Hebrew, but the text that was used for the Septuagint. And the Septuagint is 30% different, 35% different than the Masoretic, which indicates to us that there were two threads of Hebrew manuscripts. And it appears that the thread of Hebrew manuscripts that was used for the Septuagint was far more reliable than the school of Ezra, because that's what Yahusha used. He used the Aramaic, but he also used the Septuagint. So why would Yahusha use the Septuagint unless he knew that the Hebrew from which the Septuagint was derived was more reliable? So there were two threads of Hebrew. We can't just throw the Hebrew out, because a lot of people listening, they're going to say, "Oh, Hebrew, that's the Lashon Hakadosh." Oh, in Zephaniah it says that in the kingdom Yahuwah is going to restore one tongue. Okay, that's true. That's we're not questioning that. But between paradise and paradise restored, between that big circle, okay, because Hebraic time is not linear; it's circular. From paradise to paradise, we have to deal with the leaven of the Pharisees. We have to deal with the leaven of the Jehovah Testigos. We have to deal with the leaven of every religious sect that ever existed. So we're kind of like behind the eight ball. But let's make it clear. Whatever those Septuagint translators used was not what Ezra was producing. Let's make that clear, which makes the Septuagint superior to whatever the House of Ezra produced. Any other questions or comments or inputs, peeps, before we raise some topics?
Well, um, I don't know how to calculate BCE years. Maybe you can help me on this. It says that Jeremiah lived in 609 BCE, around those years, and Ezra in 480 BCE to 440 BCE. How many years between that?
Okay, now I don't know where you're getting the thing on Jeremiah other than the internet, but
Yeah, the
scholar,
internet. The internet.
scholars would disagree. So
Okay.
he was concurrent with the Babylonian captivity. The Babylonian captivity was approximately, again, approximately, we don't even know when the Torah was given, within 300 years. Approximately, the Babylonian captivity was 520, 530 BC until about deduct 70, so you're in the 450s, and then the Ezra manuscripts were produced somewhere in the 440s when Ezra died. He died roughly, from what I recall, 440, 438. There's no problem; they're concurrent, and even if Jeremiah lived 580 BC, okay, and even if Ezra lived 520, 500, there's only a 50, 60 year difference. And again, it's all guesswork. But usually, from a historical perspective, if you're within 100 years or 120 years, they were contemporaries. You
Okay.
see what I'm saying? More or less. I don't think scholars argue. I've never heard an argument that Jeremiah, Daniel, and Ezra were not contemporary. I've never heard that argument. Just the opposite. You can do some matching and you can see that they were contemporaries. Now, it's possible that Jeremiah was older, a little bit. It's possible. We don't know. We just don't know. And Google doesn't know, and artificial intelligence doesn't know. We
Okay.
do know they were just like for instance, when did Amos live? Nobody knows. They're assuming he was prophesying to the northern kingdom, which means the northern kingdom didn't cease to exist until 720 BC. Now, who else was around in 720 BC? Isaiah. So we assume, when they're not mentioned, when one prophet doesn't mention another prophet, we assume that Isaiah and Amos were contemporaries. Now, um, um, for instance, in another scripture, I believe it's in Chronicles, it talks about Hezekiah and and Isaiah the prophet, giving him the prophecy of extended life. So this is how we can, kind of clue and, piece things together. You know what I'm saying? Uh, so if Amos was talking to the northern kingdom and Isaiah was talking to the southern kingdom, so you do is you look to see when Hezekiah was alive, and then you look to see who was the king of Israel at the time of Hezekiah, the king of Judah, and you can paste this stuff together. Okay? It's pretty simple to do that. But when you get a date from Google, like for instance, a lot the people believe the Torah. 90% of scholars believe the Torah was given in 1500 BC. Now there's new evidence that the Torah was given in 1200 BC, which means that was only 200-300 years before Solomon. So when we're dealing with times, that's correct, Mordecai. Yes, that's correct. So when we're dealing with time, these are educated guesstimates. That's the easiest way to put it. Educated guesstimates. So Yahusha was born in 20 BC and died in 30 AD. See, so that's the 50 years, 20 years before, and then the 30 years. He died in the Jubilee because he was the Jubilee. He had to die as our Jubilee at the age of 49/50. And then the numbers increase. So a lot of this is Christian dating, so that makes it a little bit more confusing. But there's no doubt in my mind that they were contemporaries. Now, you know, you sometime one prophet will mention another. Like for instance, Zechariah was also a contemporary of Jeremiah, right? So they literally mention each other, which is cool. When they mention each other, it makes things a lot it makes it a lot easier to paste time together. But Baruch Hashem Yahuwah. But in all things, we have to remember, okay, Yahuwah. When we think of Yahuwah and Satan, we think of a spiritual warfare. And, we think of a spiritual struggle. But what people don't realize is one of the and if we think about it, it makes perfect sense. What people don't realize is one of the biggest struggles is Satan trying to pervert the word of Yahuwah through human beings, just like he perverted the world through human beings, Adam and Eve. And Yahuwah is constantly stopping him and preserving his word. Because remember, even though we're scholars and we're learning to be scholars, or fill in the blank, okay, if we don't have the premise, that Yahuwah has preserved his word, then there's no scriptures. There's no restoration scriptures. There's no King James. They're all Alice in Wonderland. They're all Hollywood productions. In the end, Yahuwah's struggle is not against Satan, because there is no contest, right? Yahuwah is far more powerful than Satan. But there is a struggle between Yahuwah preserving his word and Satan trying to unpreserve it or pervert it. That's where the battle is. That's one of the main battles between Yahuwah and Satan. It's not a contest. So if our premise is that Yahuwah has not preserved his word, we are wasting our time. Every single Bible believer that's ever been born is wasting their time. So it's not a question of, okay, the restoration scriptures is the word of Yahuwah and everything else is a lie. We're not saying that. We're not saying that. But just like there are levels of truth, just like there are levels of love, not all men love their wives equally. Not all men love. Some men love their wives more. Some men appreciate their wives more. Some men appreciate and love their wives less. But the premise has to be that regardless of what version you have, Yahuwah has prevailed over Satan by preserving his word. Right? What makes the restoration scriptures better, so instead of 15,000 errors or changes in this struggle, Yahuwah has cut down the 15,000 to 6,000 through us. And then he's going to cut down more. And in the end, the word will be what the original Paleo was. Paleo Hebrew, not English, not Aramaic, not Latin. But until we get that point, I believe the Aramaic is the closest, even in the Torah and even in the Tanakh, because we're not at that point yet. Right? Makes sense? But we have to start with the premise that Satan has failed to make the word of Yahuwah disappear. That doesn't mean he hasn't messed with it. That doesn't mean he hasn't tried to pervert it, but it still prevails. Regardless of what translation you have, 80 to 90% of it has been completely protected by Yahuwah. Now we're battling in the restoration scriptures and things like that. We're battling for the other 15, 20%. And Yahuwah's, to show you that he's not defeated, he's raising people like us up to fix the 15, 20%. But make no mistake about it, he has preserved his word. Because failure to believe, that makes Satan Lord. That means we need to worship Lucifer because we chose the wrong side of the battle. This is a key question. In other words, has Yahuwah had the ability to protect his scriptures from the corrupt, perverse minds of men? You have to answer that question. If you can't answer that question, you have no business studying the word. The answer is yes, he has preserved it. The answer is he doesn't need the restoration scriptures to preserve his word. What he's raised us up to do is to find those disconnects, right? To find those disconnects. So
Oh, meu.
let's advance. So let's see what we have by way of discussion. So I'm looking at a topic here, and we may have covered this, and if we did, we'll just move on to the next topic. In light of the fact that Old English Bibles basically do not come from Hebrew at all, but from Latin and Greek, even though Wycliffe and Tyndale claim to have been experts, we know that they were not fluent. How does the Restoration Scripture stand out? What are some of the main differences, including verses that were in error that have been restored? So the best way to address this is to pick a few verses that are different than most English scriptures. Okay, so the best way to say, so the topic is, how are the Restoration Scriptures different from the standard Bibles? Now, this question alone could take us 10 years, right? Obviously. So the best thing to do in a case like this is to choose a few examples. So why don't you guys, if you could think of a place that you recall reading, that just to give our listeners some idea of how it's not your standard English Bible, which we know was translated from the Latin Vulgate, and from Greek manuscripts by people who copied. Okay, they used the Masoretic text, they used the Latin, they copied, they used Luther's translations. They did not go into the Hebrew or into the Aramaic. Probably couldn't speak Aramaic. They didn't believe the scriptures were given in Aramaic, restored by Yahusha, so they didn't waste their time with that. And they didn't waste their time changing it because they figured, well, the rabbis are the experts in Hebrew. So all they did is copy and paste the errors, and the errors were passed along. So let's think. I mean, obviously, I'm in the best position to do this, but you guys may think of a couple of places where that stick out to you. Go ahead. Anybody can pop in.
The the first one that comes to my mind is Psalm 40 verse 6.
Oh,
Because when you brought that up, and I never read another Bible besides the RSTNE, the Portuguese version that Elder Joseph did and translated in it, and also the English version. So to me, it was not, it was not a big deal until I went and I started working with the scriptures, and that was the one that caught my attention the most, because literally there is an obscurity of the body of Messiah. You can see the agenda of whoever did that, basically trying to deny that the Messiah would come in a body that is not human flesh, but it is flesh nonetheless and looked like us. So that to
okay.
me is the first that comes to mind.
So let's read it first in the traditional English Bible, and then Mordecai can read it if he'd like. We'll put it up on the screen. Let's get the Masoretic version. Let's get the Masoretic, and let's see what it says in Psalm 40, verses 6 through 8. Let's start there.
Oh, you want me to, you get in, or you put it on the screen, or you want me to read
No,
it?
but I mean, I would like for somebody to, if they have the Masoretic,
Let me see if I can find it.
before I put anything up on the screen.
Okay.
Let me try to get it in English. Okay, I got it
Okay.
from the English Standard Version. Psalm 40, verse 6. In sacrifice and offering you have not delighted, but you have given me an open ear. Burnt offering and sin offering you have not required.
Okay. Read the open ear again. What verse is that?
Psalm 40, verse 6.
Read it again.
This is English Standard Version. In sacrifice and offering you have not delighted, but you have given me an open ear.
Okay.
Burnt offering and sin offering you have not required.
Next verse.
Okay, let me go to the verse 7. Let me see if I can find it. 7. Okay, then I said, behold, I have come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me.
Next verse.
I delight to do your will, O my God. Your law is within my heart.
Next verse.
Hmm.
I have told the glad news of deliverance in a great congregation. Behold, I have not restrained my lips, as you know, O Lord.
Okay. So getting back to um,
6.
verse 6. It says, you have inclined your ear.
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Nope. Here it says, you have given me an open ear.
In verse 6.
Yes, in sacrifice and offering you have not delighted, but you have given me an open ear.
So according to the Masoretic, the speaker, is telling Yahuwah that you give me an open ear. Instead of saying, as we see on the screen, but a body, the Hebrew word is goof, but a body you have prepared for me because burnt offering and sins did not cut the mustard. See that? And then verse 9, the one who comes in the body is the one who preaches the good news. See that in verse 9? So the body is missing. And then when we compare that with Hebrews chapter 10, it quotes the correct Hebrew about the body. And that is missing from the school of Daniel's stuff, but it is found in the Septuagint, right?
Yep.
Can you find it in the Hebrew? I'm sorry. Can you find it in the book of Hebrews, chapter 10? I believe it's the somewhere around the first 5 verses.
Let me try to check it. Do you want
Doesn't
me
even
to
make
see that in the Masoretic?
No, in the RSTNE, there is no Masoretic of the New Testament.
it doesn't
Remember?
even make sense on the Masoretic.
Okay.
Right. It doesn't make sense. I incline my ear. So what does that have to do with atonement?
But yeah,
If we go to
Hebrews 10.
while you're looking at it, look at Hebrews chapter 10. And I'll see if I can put it up on the screen.
Hebrews 10:5.
Okay? Start. Go ahead.
Therefore, when he comes into the current world, or Olam Hazeh, he says, sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you have prepared for me.
Okay? So whoever's writing Hebrews in Hebrews 10:5, he says, let's see.
he was definitely
He's
not reading from the Masoretic.
definitely not reading, he's not quoting the Masoretic.
Nope.
He's using the Hebrew manuscript from which the Septuagint was taken. You see that?
Yep.
And he talks about it's impossible that bulls and goats can take away sin. And it talks about sacrifice. What does somebody's ear have to do with forgiveness?
It's nothing.
What does somebody's ear have to? Somebody's listening to him. There's a lot of people who listen to him and then they turn around and disobey him. What does someone's ears have to do with forgiveness? Nothing. But here, the writer quotes verbatim from the Septuagint, which was taken from a more accurate Hebrew. So again, let's state this: a lot of the verses in the Restoration Scriptures come from the Hebrew, but that Hebrew is missing, and all we have left is a Septuagint. But we use verses like this to show that Yahusha used either the Septuagint or the Aramaic Old Testament, or he used both, or he used the Septuagint until he can fix and train the scribes on how to fix the Old Testament and preserve it in Aramaic. Nobody's sure of what came first. What we are sure is both were used. And this is a perfect. So let's take another example that might come to mind that both of you might pop into your mind. I know it's difficult, and I know I'm in a better position because I know the work. But all right, well let's Mordechai. I'll give you a head start. Let's. Why don't you explain to our audience Genesis chapter 2, verse 1 and 2? Let's first read from the Masoretic, if you have it, and then the Restoration Scriptures. Let's go to Genesis. Here's another example in why the Restoration Scriptures is not like any other scriptures, including the sacred name scriptures. Okay, because a lot of these sacred name scriptures don't make any changes. If you make two changes, you're lucky. If you get two changes, okay, don't let the name sacred name fool you. Okay, there's sacred name that want to restore everything possible, and then there's sacred name that are basically King James with 3 Hebrew words, and you're impressed. Be careful what sacred name scriptures you actually choose.
Genesis what?
chapter 2.
2.
But don't read from the RSTNE. You can see
No, from the, what you want, King James?
that's fine.
Okay, chapter 2, it says, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. Verse 2. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day
Stop.
from all his
Stop.
work which he had made.
Stop. Stop. Do you see the problem?
You want me to explain?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see the problem?
Well, this is an oxymoron here. First of all, in Genesis, in the last chapter of Genesis 1, it says that he already ended his work and it was good. Now you got to number 2, to verse 2. It's, okay, first, verse 1 says, thus the heaven and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. So it was already finished on the sixth day. Verse 2 says, on the seventh day, God ended his work which
Stop.
he
Stop.
made.
Stop. 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 There it is. There it
Oh,
is.
yeah, but wait.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
gets
Yeah.
better. It gets
Yeah.
better. And he rested on the seventh day. So it says that he finished his work. So he was working on the Shabbat on the seventh day, but he rested. How can he rest on the seventh day if he was already working? So he worked
Bingo.
and rested.
Bingo. Bingo. There you go. There you go. So
He
all
rested
your
on the seventh day.
Bibles, including probably many of the sacred name scriptures, say exactly what Mordecai. I knew you'd find it. I knew you'd pick it up. That he worked on Shabbat, like let's say in the morning, and then he took a nap. Well, wait a second. If Yahuwah can work on Shabbat, why can't I? Because in the King James and the NIV and the Shemin IV and the Kenabi and the Babi and all these alphabet soup translations, it says I can work on Shabbat. Why? Because my father worked on Shabbat.
How can the one that give the commandment of not working on Shabbat work on Shabbat himself and not set an example?
Exactly. Bingo. So this is what happens when our stubbornness says, I don't need the restored scriptures because it's just a trick to make money. No, it's a trick to destroy the devil. That's what it is. It's not a trick to make money. I don't need to sell books to sell money. I can sell coffee. I can sell hashish. All right. I can sell fentanyl. All right. You know how much money I can make selling fentanyl?
A lot of it. I
mean, if that verse don't hit you upside the head, there's something wrong with your translation. We're just wasting our time in this roundtable. We're wasting. If people can't, if they don't get upset about what you just read, then I don't. There's no pulse that can bring them back to life. People should get upset when I see stuff like that. I get upset.
Now, when you go to Bible Hub and you read all those translations, there is maybe 2 more translations that says that he rested on the sixth day. It doesn't mean that those translations that they fixed everything, but it's just a witness to the restoration of scriptures for that particular verse. That the restoration of scripture is not the only one that is quoted in the original manuscript and says that he rested on the sixth day, not on the seventh day. So
You
we're
mean
not alone. So the restoration, we're not alone in this. There's other witnesses.
But you mean he ceased working on the sixth day?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That he stopped working on the sixth day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And let's take another. I mean, this should be pretty simple, but let's go to Isaiah 9, 6, and 7.
I was gonna say that.
You were going to say that? Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, we can literally do this for
forever.
15 episodes.
Oh, I got
Okay.
one after that if you let me.
But Yahusha knew that the Hebrew that had escaped the school of Ezra was more accurate. We call it the Septuagint. That makes you feel good because it makes you feel like I'm smart. Okay. But the truth is, when we say Septuagint, what are we saying? we're saying it was the Hebrew that Ezra didn't get a hold of. Somehow Yahuwah protected it from the hands of Ezra. And boy, we think of Ezra as this wonderful Jewish man. Without him, we wouldn't have any scriptures. Let me say this again because some people don't listen to all our episodes. There is no scripture in the world today, okay? No scripture that does not come from the school of Ezra. None. Unless you have the Septuagint or the Aramaic Peshitta. If you don't have the Septuagint, if you don't have the Aramaic Peshitta and the Dead Sea Scrolls, which to me is not fully valid because they're fragments, okay? I can't eat one piece of rice and be full. I can't eat one morsel, one crumb of toast and say that I had pancakes, okay? So here's where a lot of people get fooled. They try to trick you and say, "Oh, well my research is based on the Dead Sea Scrolls." The Dead Sea Scrolls are fragments. Okay, the entire documents that we have from Qumran are community rules. The Damascus document, the songs of the Sabbath sacrifice. Okay, they're Siddur manuals, they're liturgical manuals, they're apocrypha books, extra apocrypha books. But when it comes to the actual texts, they are not books; they are fragments. So you can only take the Dead Sea Scrolls so far. Okay. A lot of scholars are not going to tell you this because they want to impress you that they've studied the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's a lie. What they've studied are fragments, and those are only the fragments that the Israeli government and the Catholic Church give you access to. There's a lot of fragments that nobody has access to. Okay, so we need the Peshitta as a basis for what we believe, along with the Septuagint. We need that as a basis. And no other translations put all the weight upon those scriptures like we do, which puts us miles and light years ahead. So anybody that asks what the difference is, okay, we're not chastising you. You want to learn. You've got to start somewhere. But just realize a year or two from now, when your life is really embroiled and embedded in the Restoration Scriptures, True Name Edition, you're not going to ask that question anymore. It's going to be, you're going to look back and say, "Oh, that was a silly question. Why did I ask?" There are millions of differences. Okay, Mordecai, that's fine. So, Yoshi, go ahead. Mordecai has to step away for a couple of minutes. So let's go to Isaiah 9, 6, and 7 in a regular translation.
Let me get it for you. Okay, got it, the NIV.
That's fine.
So, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace.
Okay, verse 7.
Verse 7. Let me try to get it to verse 7.
We're in Isaiah 9, 6, and 7.
Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this.
Okay, beautiful. Now that's going to be the traditional translation in almost every translation. Now we're going to go to the Restoration Scripture. You want to see if it's any different? Go ahead.
You want me to read it? Okay. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty Al, my Abba's Witness, the Sar Shalom. And I will bring shalom upon the rulers, and even his health upon them.
Now, all right. Let's pause right there. Do you see the differences?
Let me just get it right quick because I lost it. Okay, there it is.
Look at that. So let's analyze the differences. Now, by the way, we got this from the Septuagint and from studying the actual Hebrew. So let me just show you and explain to you how we wound up with this. For unto us a child is born, a son is given. That's the same as in Masoretic, correct?
Correct.
The government will be upon his shoulder. Same.
Same.
His name will be called Wonderful. Same.
Same.
Counselor. Same.
Same.
The Mighty Al. Same.
Same.
Now, here's a difference. My Abba's witness. Because in the Hebrew, it's Aviad. Now, here's the trick. Listen carefully, everybody, all our listeners. In the Hebrew, Aviad is commonly translated as everlasting father. So, how can the Son and the Father be the same person? Since when is the Father and the Son, okay, the same entity? In other words, they are the same entity, but they're different parts of the same entity. But if we use any translation other than the rest, I don't care if it's the Sefer, I don't care if it's the Hallelujah, you have the Son being called the Father, and you have the Son being called the Son. Now, what are you going to do? You have the Son being called the Son, and you have the Son being called the everlasting Father. Now, let's go back to the restoration scriptures. So up till here, it's the same, up until the word mighty Al. But the Hebrew Avi means my father, father, Avi, my father, possessive. Ad, the Hebrew word ad is witness, like the Ark of the Testimony was Aharon Ha'edut, or the tent of the testimony was Ohel Ha'edut. Ed, same word, ed. In Aramaic, the word for congregation is the congregation of witness, or the edata. Let me say that again. In Aramaic, the congregation of witness. In Hebrew, kehilah, a term we're all familiar with, kehilah. But in Aramaic, it's not kehilah, it's edata, which literally means the congregation that bears witness of Yahuwah. So here, he is the Father's witness, because he came into the world and said, I am a faithful witness. He was the Father's only witness. Why? Because it was the only one that was in heaven in eternity past with the Father, who was able and eligible to be a witness, right? So we are his witnesses. We are Yahusha's witnesses because we've been commissioned. But the Father only has one witness, by Abba's witness. That is Aviad, the Prince of Peace. So from the Hebrew, we didn't change the Hebrew at all. Even from the Masoretic, instead of mistranslating it and saying that the Son is the Son and he's also the everlasting Father. Well, why not the everlasting grandfather? Why not the everlasting great grandfather? Let's call the Son the everlasting great grand. Well, let's call the Son Mohandas Gandhi. I mean, it's stupid, right? If you carry this illogic, you get more illogic. So that's change number one. Change number two, where do we take this from? The everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So right here is where all the translations end, right? Yaled nolad lanu ben natanu lanu vayeh misrach shichmo vayikra shmo peleoet el gibor aviad sar shalom. Okay? So in all translations, it ends right here. So the question is, where did the restoration scriptures concoct this? I will bring shalom upon the rulers and health upon the rulers. Yoshi, where do we get that from?
Septuagint.
Did you see this in the Septuagint?
Hallelujah.
Did you
Yep.
see it with your own eyes?
Yep.
Did you see? I'm not talking about reading the RSTNE. Did you see this with your own eyes?
Yep. I have it.
Okay. And you can look it up in the Greek. So the entirety of what this says, that this Son of Yahuwah, the witness of the Father, not the mighty Father or the everlasting Father, the witness of the Father, will bring shalom and health to his rulers. Who are his rulers?
Fivefold ministry.
That's right. He's the Prince of Peace. He brings us shalom and he brings us health.
Hallelujah.
Not to the Jews, but to his rulers.
Yep.
And that's just a few of the crumbs of the changes in the RSTNE. Not changes, restorations. Any closing comments, gentlemen?
I have one more verse, if I may.
Yeah, man, go ahead.
I'm telling you, I'm relating to you guys verses that changed my walk and changed my whole perspective, because
Yep.
before this I was a full-fledged pagan, and I thought the Bible was just a story for children, to be read to them before they went to sleep. So
And
when
suckers.
I started, yeah, when I started learning this, it blew my mind because it made all the sense in the world. So I know there is no Brit Hadasha in the Masoretic text, but Romans 10:4 to me is a gigantic example
Ooh, ooh.
of how twisted the word of Yahuwah can be, because
Take us.
it's yeah, Romans 10 verse 4, to me this is a gigantic one, because if we don't get this through our heads, we are basically losing our time trying to keep Shabbat, trying to keep the Moadim, because according to what it is written in normal translations, this amounts to nothing. So let me get the
I
King
got it
James.
for you. I got it.
I'm gonna get the other translations to see,
Sure.
to correlate what I'm saying.
Yep.
So Romans 10:4. I'm just gonna read this verse. It has no necessity reading the whole context, but basically it says Christ is the culmination of the law, like he is the end of the law, so that there may be righteousness for everyone who believes. So basically, what this says in the King James version is that
Right.
once Christ came, ain't no law necessary anymore because he is the righteousness for everyone who believes. So that would excuse all Christianity and all religious that branch out from it to, eat pig, to don't keep Shabbat, to, do whatever you want. Because once you said, I believe in you, like a fairy tale, you're in. But the Greek has an interesting word in the Septuagint, and I'm using the Apostolical Bible Polyglot, and I want to get the word that is G5056, telos.
Man.
Is a primary word that basically points out to a definite point or goal, is the point aimed. So he is the result of the Torah, and there's no law. We're talking about instructions. We're not talking about just the Constitution. We are talking about the whole thing from Genesis to Revelation, plus the so-called apocrypha hidden books that are no longer hidden. So he is not the end. He is the fulfilling of it. He is basically the incarnation of everything we should have done but couldn't do, precisely because we have hard hearts and difficulty with stubbornness and whatever. So here it says he is the telos, he is the goal of it, not the end of it. That to me changed my life forever.
Yes. Now I will say that some sacred name versions have fixed that. Not all, but some, because we want to be fair. We want to make our case for the RSTNE, but we also want to be fair. Many sacred name scriptures have fixed that, like the South African scriptures, but they're nowhere near as restoration oriented as we are. So let's look at it in RSTNE. Want to read that, Mordechai? You want to read that?
Verse 4, for the Mashiach is the actual goal of the Torah for an eternal Sadiq righteous standing with everyone that believes.
Wow.
You want me to keep going?
No, no, that's fine.
Okay.
So in
Hallelujah.
the RSTNE, here's the point. Everyone who is seeking to be eternally justified, meaning just as if we've never sinned, must come to the goal of the Torah. The goal of the Torah was to get you in the kingdom. The problem was the Torah couldn't get you in the kingdom. But the heart of the Father in giving the Torah was to point you in the right direction.
Hallelujah.
So the Torah pointed you in the right direction, so that when you got to the end of that road, you'd be forever, eternally immortal in the heavens. So first comes the Torah to put you on the road, and then comes the Messiah to bring you to the home at the cul-de-sac at the end of the road. One doesn't contradict the other, and one doesn't replace the other, and we have that beautifully preserved in the language of the RSTN. Any closing comments, gentlemen, before we end
I,
this roundtable?
I just want to say that you cannot take Torah from Moshiach. You cannot separate. You cannot separate Torah from Mashiach, Mashiach from Torah.
In other words,
100%.
like it says in the RSTNE, the Torah puts you on the road, but Yahusha, finished work, taleo, perfection, maturity, pushes you to the end of the street, which is heaven. That's the cul-de-sac. That's the resting place. And he's the whole purpose of the road. In other words, the road is not the purpose. The purpose of the road is to get you to the cul-de-sac.
Hallelujah!
Hallelujah is right. Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem Yahuwah.
Hey man, we'll see you next week, all right? Yah willing. On another
Yahweh.
episode. Yeah, man. Yah
Yahweh.
willing. On another episode of the RSTNE Roundtable. Baruch Hashem Yahuwah.
Baruch Hashem Yahuwah.
Baruch Hashem Yahuwah.
RSTNE Roundtable Podcast, a discussion that focuses in the gold standard of the word of Yahuwah. Here are your three hosts, Sholiak Moshe, leader Yoshiyahu, and leader Mordecai. Hi there. Welcome to the RSTNE Roundtable Podcast, a discussion that focuses in the gold standard of the word of Yahuwah. Here are your three hosts, Sholiak Moshe, leader Yoshiyahu, and leader Mordecai.